And hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, with yet another edition of the worst produced show on the internet, brought to you by the friendly folks at Ustream, who, the friendly folks at Ustream. I hope everybody's been doing well. We're back. I'm just going to do it one more time here to let everybody know to hit the refresh button. Because we have to shut down one browser, open the other browser, and all the rest, and so on and so on and so forth. But in any event, here we are. It's good to be back. We were not here last Wednesday, for reasons that are beyond my understanding. Man, this is a little intimidating, I got to tell you. I got 3 different images of me, all slightly out of sync. Much the way I go through life with 3 different things going on at the same time, and they're all slightly out of sync. So there we go. Anyway, it's good to be back. I don't know if there's been a whole lot of stuff. I've been chewing up. I've just the only person who really understands this that's watching right now is Natasha, and the only other people get at least a glimmer of it are Raucous fighter pilot Viper Check and known miscreant Matt Lloyd. But I've been just working my little tail off in addition to the regular work. I've realized I'm going to have to build this whole game thing atom by atom. Atom by atom. So that means everything. Tearing down textures. I got to tell you, I just really love it. It's very therapeutic. Last night, just before I went to bed, I had a 3D model of a helmet that I'm going to use for this first sort of CG video, and then I decided I wanted to detach some parts and make them shiny. So I got back into 3D Studio, and I found myself there turning on and off individual polygons on a mesh with, I don't know, 50,000, who am I kidding? 400,000 or 500,000 vertices. And it's like click, click, click. And it actually was really kind of fun. I had a good time doing it. And the thing is really starting to reach really excellent quality. So that's pretty much that. For those of you who've been up on the Facebook page, Natasha and I went out and hung out at the Staircase a couple days ago. And we did that little recording there about them basically putting in a satellite-linked, parking fee thing out at 40,000 Pacific Coast Highway. It's the actual address. And it's been seen by like 30,000 people, and that's strange how that works sometimes. I guess there's other people out there who really understand just how relentless these bastards are. You keep asking yourself where it's going to end. It's never going to end. It's never going to end until we put some heads on pikes on freeway overpasses to encourage the others. That's pretty much what it's going to take to stop these guys from taxing every single thing that we've ever made, produced, or whatever in the whole world. But I digress. Now, what's interesting about that was I mentioned that the Staircase was just my favorite place and so beautiful out there. And then the reason we went was to take a look at some photo locations for Natasha. And I had a couple places marked on the way back. And we stopped at the next one. And it was so much better than the Staircase. And I'd been here for 30 years, and I'd never even stopped at this place because I didn't think you could possibly beat the first one. But, man, we just were out there for hours, and she loved it, and I loved it, and it was great. That's right, Dave Big Booty. You maniacs! You blew it up! What does he call them? You maniacs, you blew it up. God damn you! God damn you to hell. You blew it up. Yeah, you get your acting dollar out of Charlton Heston. and William Shatner. I suspect if you paid $10 to see a play that Charlton Heston and William Shatner were both acting in, that you would probably get about $140 worth of acting for your $10 ticket. And that's a thing. Just go back to what I was talking about just for 1 second. And I'm not really bragging or showing off here because there's nothing I'd rather have than been able to raise some money to get some help on this. But I've got this little movie written, and it's probably 4 or 5 different locations. So I have to create the actors and adjust the faces and get them as photorealistic as I can. And then I have to put them into appropriate naval costumes. I've looked at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things for the kind of helmets and armor that they used, and I've tried probably 8 or 10 of them. Finally found a couple that I liked that worked for the story. I had to get those things textured and in place, and to get all these other things like belts and pistols and the straps had to go around the thigh. I have to get all those things fit and adjusted. That's just to get the first character out of the box. Now, the good news is you only have to do that aspect of it once. If you ever need that same character in his Navy flight suit, then you're just open the file. So that aspect is nice. But here's what's left to go. I have to now send this off to a Ukrainian who's going to translate these models into 3D Studio format and Unreal Engine format. And then I have to do a second character in the same uniform, which is relatively straightforward since I have all the pieces now. And then I have to texture the spaceship model, which is a big deal because I want these things to look better than the game does. So that means photorealistic textures wherever I can, which means I have to take this existing mesh of this spaceship, break off little pieces, sometimes 1 polygon at a time, find a texture that I like, glue it on there, glue them back together, put them in, so that starts working. I have to prepare damage on the other ship. And I have to have some kind of effects for sparking and plasma leaking. I have to figure out how to get all that stuff done. Inside the cockpit, I have to have displays of not only the navigation displays, and they've got to look right. Navigation displays can't just be a bunch of there's so many of these After Effects templates that I've looked at. And they're just like science fiction template, and it's just nothing but a box with numbers counting down, E4, 9, 7, and then just 16, 22, just numbers, and lines of dialogue. And I just look at this and I think to myself, what kind of an insane cocktail party is this? I mean, it looks like information, but there's no information here. And David Booty will be coming up before Big Bat Problems. Yes, and the reason I'm on this, and the reason for those of you, because I talk about it every other week or so if I can help it, but the reason I'm doing these things is because they are the halfway house to doing feature films. This is how you get from where I am to where I want to be with things like Big Bad Problems and all the rest of it. So I have to not only create the interior cockpit and add detail to that, but I have to also put animated displays on all of the screens to make me happy. And to make me happy takes a lot because I don't want just running stuff. I want it to look like real screens. I want the air traffic control screens to do that. So then I have to build the air traffic control center. I can probably buy a couple of rooms and buy some consoles, move those around, but I got to staff those with 7 or 8 different characters, and they all have to look different, and they have to be in some kind of outfits. There's going to be a big hologram in the middle of the air traffic control room, and those little things have to move the way I would expect them to move, like on an actual radar screen, not just these, red arrows just kind of gliding in. It's got to have the little transponder thing and a little 4-digit code for the individual vehicle, and every scan, it's got to move, and all that stuff thinking about. I have to recreate the space station one way or another. That's going to be challenging. I'll probably take that out of game, to be honest with you. And then I have to have this one guy's ship hit this thing and explode, and that is a big deal. I'll probably do that with a visual overlay of an actual explosion. You can buy these effects packs for After Effects, which is another piece of software that I know well. Simon Says, good to see you. You've done excellent work, my man. Thank you. Unlike those other 2 layabouts and degenerates. So what I can do is I can basically have this flash go into the station, and then you get an actual footage of a gasoline explosion and particles and all this other stuff that's shot against a green screen. And you buy these things clear so that you can put explosions on anything. I could very easily just take the video that I'm recording now for the Stratosphere Lounge and just put a giant explosion on the back wall there, and without too much trouble at all, just put a series of bullet holes right below Dave Bowman over there. You know, ting, 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 particles would come out and little bits of smoke would come up. You just glue them on. And that's the first scene. And then I have to build a locker room, and I have to build a second character, and then I have to figure out how to do the body and the facial mo capture for that, get the lip sync right, bring in Alfonso Rachel to do that character, bring in somebody else to do the first character, somebody else to do the air traffic controller character. That's the second scene. I need a third scene where I need this guy's living quarters. That's another set I have to build. He's got a cat, so I have to have a computer-generated cat in there, and the cat has to look pretty good and go meow. And then I've got an exterior street scene with these two guys walking along the street, and I have to fill it filled with colorful Blade Runner type people, you know, strange looking futuristic ladies of the night and weird guys with strange hair and all the rest of it. And conversation there. Then I have to do the outside of the nightclub with all of the talking androids and all the rest of it. Then the hallway, and then the inside with the lasers and the dancers and the dead bodies and all of that stuff. And that's all I have to do in order to get this thing finished. So I'm feeling good about it. I think we'll probably have it by next Thursday. It's overwhelming, but we have to have it by October. There's a big convention in October, and I expect to have it before then. And I hope to be able to raise some money to hire some people to help with it. But in any event, that's what I've been working on, and I'd love to tell you it's work, but I just love it so. And you can, if you're watching this show live, you can now in the comment section put tender words of condolences to my long-suffering wife who sees me in there for 10 hours in a row without moving. Blood is turning into syrup, I think. Anyway, so that's that. I got to tell you, I had a serious neck pain for a long, long time. Went to this amazing chiropractor. Somehow forgot to reschedule him, and now I am hurting. I'm a hurting boy. So I think we'll probably keep it even a little briefer than usual tonight. But I wanted to be here, so now we return ourselves to the Facebook page and we find out what the hell people want to hear about and talk about. So here we go. Internet leaps into life. I believe I'm going to do a firewall on the Trump trifecta thing. That's one of the segments that Steve did, and I think that's worth some deeper insight because he's basically pulled it off. Korea, Jerusalem, and Iran. Impressive. Eric M. Blake. Now, I have to, as you know, I do not see the questions, and I open up the browser right in real time, so I had no idea knowing that this would be the first question, but nevertheless, here it comes. From Eric M. Blake, greetings, President Bill Whittle of the Aurora Star Republic. Hello. Is it Prime Minister, Chancellor, Supreme Overlord? No, it's Vectron is the name. He has a space question. So what are the odds that Elon Musk is actually secretly constructing a Reagan SDI missile defense shield, the Star Wars program realized at last? Seriously, with Putin bragging about his unlimited range hypersonic missiles and, of course, Iran and maybe North Korea, if talks go south, I would think that an under-the-table development of the SDI would be ideal. And let's face it, if anyone can pull it off, it's Elon Musk. Thoughts? Yeah, I hate to disagree with you, Eric, especially after such a nice opening, but I think Elon Musk would be just terrible at that. The same things that made the Falcon Heavy launch as an example so compelling, the fun with the guy in the car, red convertible, his arm, out there, listening to David Bowie playing "Don't Panic" from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on the screens. That kind of a mind is terrific at big programs and big new things. But the anti-missile problem is a very different animal, and all of the things that would have made Lockheed or Northrop or Boeing terrible at developing a new booster and certainly selling it to the people in terms of just making it cool instead of selling it to the government for hundreds of trillions of dollars. Those are the guys you want, I think, working on something like missile defense. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't. It's not to say it couldn't use improvements, but we've got a pretty decent anti-missile defense right now. Vladimir Putin can talk about an unlimited range hypersonic missile, but ICBM from the 1960s is an unlimited range hypersonic missile. So I think it'd be much easier to shoot down a cruise missile than it would, even if it's going faster than the speed of sound, because hypersonic usually means Mach 5, 6, 7, somewhere around there. Warheads coming into the atmosphere from a 50-year-old ICBM are coming in at Mach 24, 25, something like that. It doesn't seem to me that there's anything new on the table. No one, I think, seriously expects that there's any defense against a full-scale nuclear attack by us, from us, the Chinese, anything more than, let's say, 10 or maybe 15 or 20 inbound words. It's just off the top of my head guess. Man, this hurts. But if we're dealing with a smaller number, certainly what North Korea or Iran could throw if they decide to go that route, which would be a mistake on their part. I, living in Los Angeles, which is one of the potential target areas, am exceedingly comfortable with our ability to knock down a handful of incoming ICBMs. We haven't exactly gone well in this line of work. If you're not going forward, you're going backward, and to that degree, when Obama shut down a bunch of these programs, it certainly didn't help us any. But for instance, I'd like to have the airborne laser back, the 747 boost phase laser. But basically, what we've got is we've got a realistically good defense for the coast phase and a pretty good defense for the terminal phase. I don't know if we have anything for the boost phase right off the bat, but I'm sure we actually probably do, because I'm sure there are missiles in theater, and I'm not worried about it. Something else that I do not have the link in front of me, and I don't know how to find it. Hang on. I was playing with this the other day in the airport. My wife was somewhat perturbed because I was looking at, interactive nuclear blast simulator map. There you go. Been a big nuke map. That's it. Okay. Yeah, it's wicked cool. If you go to nuclearsecrecy.com/nuke map, nuclear, NUKULAR, nuclearsecrecy.com//nuke map, you will get to a pretty kind of a crude looking device, but it's wicked cool. And basically what it, hang on, let me just peel off the comments so I can see what's going on here. So basically what you can do with this fun toy is you can put a marker down pretty much anywhere in the world. There are presets. So for instance, I'm going to drag a preset and I'll set it to Los Angeles, California. And then I can enter a yield in kilotons, which I can just make up, or I can select from a preset. And then he's got a list of pretty much not every nuclear weapon that was ever detonated, but pretty much every category or class of nuclear weapons. For example, I could put gadget Trinity test let's just do that, 20 kiloton yield. It's more than I thought, actually. And we're going to make the target point Los Angeles International Airport. Just have to take my word for it. So if I decide that I'm going to blow up Gadget, which was the Trinity bomb, at LAX, which I'm going to do because I feel like it, and I just simply hit the... I also have casualties and radioactive fallout, all kinds of cool things like that. So we'll turn those on too, and we'll make it an airburst, and boom. Okay, so if you put one right over LAX and you detonate Gadget, people would be surprised that the estimated fatalities are less than 5,000. It's a little worse. It's probably 9/11 half again. And the reason I'm doing this macabre and bizarre and seemingly heartless simulation, again, nuclearsecrecy.com/nukemap, NUKEMAP/. The reason I'm doing this is because people have no conception of how different an A bomb is from an H bomb. Now, if we were to change that and go to the nuclear weapon that the Koreans tested in 2009 was 6 kilotons. That was a dud. Let's blow that up on LAX. Yeah, it doesn't even leave the airport. Although 4,000 people died, that's probably how many people are there at LAX. But, you know, you're not even breaking windows a mile away, practically. North Korea's got the North Korean, it's the biggest weapon. It's a significant weapon now. They've apparently tested one in 2017, 150 kilotons. That's a big bomb. So let's drop the big bomb on LAX. Boom. You're still, 66,000 fatalities. And if you put it in the center of downtown, like I say, I know this is very macabre and weird and all that, but I'm going to try to make a point here. So let's just put it someplace really populated, like right a most populated area, bad case scenario, okay, right there. Detonate that. So that's a bad day, all right. If the biggest Korean nuclear weapon that they've ever produced were to hit the Los Angeles area in its most densely populated section, it looks like 161,000 people killed and 582,000 wounded. But that's for a 150 kiloton weapon. I think you're probably looking much closer to something like, let's see, biggest weapon that Pakistan ever tested, 45 kilotons. Densely populated area, boom. I know, this is quite bizarre. I'll put it over Barbara Streisand's house. I love you, Steve Darrow. You are my favorite person on the internet. I will do that in 1 second. 75,000 fatalities with the biggest bomb that Pakistan produced. Now we're going to go out to Malibu, and we're going to... This is the greatest idea ever. That is the greatest idea ever. Steve Darrow, you on the internet for the day. We're going to move our blast radius here directly over Malibu. I've flown over that on Point Doom many times. I know exactly where that house is. So, I know right exactly where to put this thing. Hang on 1 second now. And then we just put it right there. And if you put the Pakistan bomb there, boom. $2,000 fatalities, which is, brutal, but at least you get Barbara Streisand, and that's the main thing. Now, if you take the biggest nuclear weapon ever made, the biggest hydrogen weapon ever made, Tsar Bomba, which was dropped and tested in the northern islands north of mainland Mother Russia, and Tsar Bomba was dropped at half power. It was the largest man-made explosion ever. It wasn't 45 kilotons like this Pakistan bomb. It was 50 megatons. But let's go all the way. Tsar Bomba was designed to produce a yield of 100 megatons, 100 million tons of TNT. So now if we switch to Tsar Bomba and we put it over Barbra Streisand's house, and I think we have to go with Tsar Bomba because it's the only way to be sure. Boom. Oh my God, the scale just zoomed out. Even over Streisand's house, it kills 874,000 people. If you put Tsar Bomba pretty much here in downtown LA, it's just overkill. I mean, the blast radius goes out into the ocean. Boom. Here come the numbers. 5 million people killed. But that's not going to happen. So I'm playing around, and I know it sounds like I'm being flip about something that's very serious, but my point is that an A-bomb and an H-bomb are very, very, very different animals, and no one's talking about H-bombs. Very likely an A-bomb that could be delivered by Korea would produce something like 9/11 style fatalities, maybe half again more. And that's not a good day. And I'm not saying, I can't wait for that to happen. I am saying that people have such a misconception of these things. We were in Honolulu. Let's see what happens if we put I'm going to put Tsar Bomba over Honolulu. So if the Koreans put a typical Korean weapon, they had a 500-ton one in there. That's hilarious. I guess hilarious is probably not the word. 150 kilotons over Honolulu. Boom. Oh, it's a bad day too. But again, the actual damage radius is much smaller than you'd think. 142,000 fatalities according to this. And so this is the kind of threat that we're facing. And when people hear nuclear weapons, that's not what they think about. When people hear nuclear weapons, they think about H-bombs. So just to close this happy Halloween kind of thing, if you put what is a likely sized Korean weapon, let's say 45 kilotons, and you detonate this over Times Square, you detonate a Korean weapon over Times Square, you get 400,000 killed. That's if you put it right over Times Square. However, when it comes time to H-bombs, if you were to take the bombs, the missiles that were on the Cuban Missile Crisis, for example, if you put a Soviet missile from the Cuban Missile Crisis over New York, you don't get 407,000 killed. You get, wow, 2.5 million. Puts our bomba there. That's unbelievable. 8 million. The fireball radius, just the actual size of the mushroom cloud on fire on Tsar Bomba is 6.1 kilometers. It's probably 4 miles across. Big deal. Anyway, enough of this silliness, but if you're into these kind of things, can't recommend it highly enough, nuclearsecrecy.com/nuke map. And I think everybody should have to do this, should have to understand what we're talking about. What are we talking about? And by the way, if you drop, last one, if you drop the Hiroshima bomb on Times Square, you get 263,000 killed. And another 500,000 injured. The 1 psi air blast radius is... So you're not breaking windows beyond 2 miles. Windows. buildings are good within 1 mile. I don't know. It's all strange. I know it's strange. Um, but in any event, these are the kind of things that occupy my mind occasionally, and I think people should have a good idea about nuclear weapons, have some fundamental understanding of what we're talking about, and I just spent a fair amount of time doing that, so hope that was as interesting to you as it was to me. And again, you can see that nuclearsecrets.com/nuke map. It's just if you're interested in things like this, it's very 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 well done. All right, moving on. Kirk Serber says, I just saw your appearance on Comics and Cocktails from November 2015, where you debated whether Kirk or Picard was the better captain. Can you tell us about that? How did you get connected with that crew, and did you all continue the debate after the show ended? Sorry. It looks like an interesting show, and I think I'm going to keep watching it. Also, I had to rewatch the Dowd Conundrum, which is one of my favorite videos that you've ever done. Thank you, Kirk. Kirk. Epic. Took me a second. Sorry, Kirk. Wow, what a great name for a comment like that. So I did that because the guy who was on the show, not the guy I was arguing with, but the other guy, Nathan Lichtman, was a producer at PJTV. He produced the Afterburners there and Trifecta and stuff. And he asked me to go, and it was a lot of fun. I was over prepared, I think. I mean, I just had so much artillery. But the line, I mean, the line out of that debate, the debate between whether Kirk or Picard is a better captain, it just comes down to this, James Kirk made the galaxy safe for Jean-Luc Picard to be able to drink tea. That's pretty much the way it goes. I cannot, I just simply, I don't know, I simply cannot compare those two shows. And I just never really took to the Next Generation. I thought the Enterprise D is hideously ugly, and it looks stunted. I mean, get a cross section of a spaceship. It's supposed to have, like, the engines are supposed to be big, like, it's like an animal ready to pounce or something. This thing looks like it needs a wheelchair, and I don't know. I just thought the whole thing was weak. I thought Picard was weak. I thought the whole, we surrender, make it so, engage. In fact, the show was so boring. And this is actually the main thing about, and we won't waste a lot of time on this, but the main thing about what's interesting to me about Next Generation is, in the original series, you were going to boldly go where no man has gone before, which meant that every single week you're going to come to a planet where you have no idea what is there. You have no idea. Is it going to be a white gorilla with a unicorn horn sticking out of his head? Is it going to be a foppish kind of a 17th century dandy with a loaded pistol? Is it going to be, super beings made out of energy? Is it you're going to find Zephyr Cochrane out on a planet? So you don't know what you're going to find, and you never knew what you're going to find. And in the Next Generation, everything is so civilized that you're very rarely finding any new things. And so what they had to do was they basically had to create the holodeck to make it interesting enough to have an episode. In other words, this universe is so boring that we have to pretend to be, in gangster land, or we have to pretend to be this or that. And I mean, seriously, guys, if you really want to do a gangster show, why don't you do what they did in the original show and go to a planet where they basically picked up some Earth stories and ran the planet like real gangsters. Piece of the action, one of the great funny episodes, and I remember just being completely intrigued by how to play Fizbin. And if you don't know what Fizbin is, look it up. That's what the internet's for. But I laughed my tail off when I was listening to how to play Fizbin. Anyway, and thank you for the Dowd Conundrum. I've said this many times about that video. It's certainly not my best work, but it is my favorite work. And to be in the uniform and in the chair, and I just think it's pretty good political commentary too. On top of it, honestly, the whole idea of intellectuals, running things, is a bad idea. So thank you. That was nice to have that memory back. Here we go. Our friend Merlin Wendelboe. Name seems to ring a bell somehow. Merlin says during the campaign it was said that if Trump were to win, blacks would be re-enslaved and LGBT WTFs would be sent to concentration camps. Where are the auction blocks and how are the LGBTs enjoying their new accommodations? And why aren't the liberals eating crow for the fact that none of their dire predictions have come to pass? Well, Merlin, this is the thing. You see, this is the benefit of being a progressive. Um, the it goes down the same memory hole as the socialism thing. By the way, Dave Big Booty says the Hiroshima atomic bomb afterburner is the best thing I ever did. I agree, and and that's depressing because it's really the first thing I ever did. But that was the one that I put the most research into, and as I've said before, of all the work I've done, I actually think that that one and probably that one alone. Forgive me for saying this. I think it is of historical significance. I think it is such a compelling, thorough, complete destruction of the idea that we didn't have to bomb them. It was, it was really very, 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 very proud of that one. Anyway, back to Merlin. So Merlin, here's the thing: if you tell people that you're going to, pave the streets with gold because of the miracle of socialism, and instead of paving it with gold, you pave it with blood, well, then that's just unfortunate, and just didn't really count. So, we go back to that again. A better question is not why they stifle all of their failures. The better question is why do we let them get away with it? And it comes down to, again, see these two sides, this giant clash between good and evil that we find ourselves in are almost balanced. So it's more of a yin-yang Eastern kind of thing, really, than a Judeo-Christian thing where the big guy's in charge. Although I still believe that the big guy's in charge of this one anyway. So here's the thing, though. They have... It's not just the megaphones. It's the... And to say it's the culture or the pop culture is underestimating what the left has going for them. They have the ability to make things disappear. They have the ability to make things appear that aren't real. And they have the ability to make things float through the air and stay there forever, no matter how trivial they might be. These are enormous powers that we have to fight against. Those are their powers. Powers to make things like the Hillary Clinton thing just go away, like it just never was a big deal. Oh, you guys are talking about Benghazi again. By the way, more evidence coming out that basically Hillary Clinton sent Chris Stevens out to Benghazi in order to recover some Stinger missiles that she and Obama had given to, it was either Al-Qaeda or ISIS, I guess it was Al-Qaeda. And they decided, oops, maybe we should get these Stinger missiles back before they shoot down a passenger jet with it. And so they sent him out there to get these things back, basically, and all of the lies they told afterwards. But one of the things I heard was that basically, and this doesn't surprise me in the least, that as this thing was going down, I mean, I started writing about this and doing videos about this pretty much right after it happened. And I had heard that Obama went to sleep around midnight while they were still getting live video of these guys fighting for their lives and waiting for the rescue that never came. It's the most shameful thing I ever saw. And then I find out that according to some sources, that basically Obama said at midnight or somewhere, it's your problem. You deal with it. I'm going to bed. Well, good night, Mr. President. Anyway. Yes, Steve Darrow, I will get to your question. I promise. I see it there. So, this is the thing. In order for them to stay in the game, they have to be able to control virtually all of the information. In order for us to be able to stay in the game, our information is true. And so it's a game of suppress the truth versus promote the truth. And the weapons they have for suppression are enormous. The weapons we have for promoting it are minuscule. This is the giant single struggle of my life, is the frustration, not with the left and these evil bastards. They've been here since the beginning of time. That's not what really tears the heart out of me. The hardest thing about my life is how hard it is to convince conservatives to put money into pop culture and into fighting these people where they're actually coming from, which is with words and stories and not with guns, because they're afraid of guns. We got all these guns, they're not coming at us with guns. So, yeah, that's a little tough. I think I'll do three more. I'll do John's and then another Merlin one, and then I'll do Steve Darrow. And then we'll call it a night. John Gwaltzka? Sorry, John, if I blew that. Basically says, when we were kids in the 1960s, it was cool to be the counterculture and fight the man. Considering how the pro-cards control the media, education, Hollywood, etc., aren't they the man now? And hasn't it become cool, the cool thing for kids to be conservative, libertarian? Yes, but. Yes, but. There is a fair amount of evidence that the generation following the millennials, that Generation Z, is more conservative and perhaps significantly more conservative than the millennials are. They're rebelling against their older siblings, or, you know, in some cases their young parents, and their constant sort of whininess and you know, just general unappetizing qualities. You know, there's the whole kind of, all we do is protest. All we know how to do is protest. All we do is, there seems to be some evidence for that. But again, the cool is determined. It's a group selection thing. It's we all determine what is cool at any given time. James Dean is obviously one of the coolest guys I think who ever lived. James Dean was a counterculture force. James Dean was cool in fighting against kind of this very staid, kind of, rigid Eisenhower America as outlined by thank you, Bill, as outlined by Thurston Howell III, who had played his father. But nowadays, if you're hoping for a rebellion against the left, all of the cool kids are on the left. It's a much tougher thing to do, which is why the Kanye thing was so enormously important. Kanye West, I wasn't a fan. I've become more of a fan, not only because he's waking up in front of my eyes, but also because he refuses to back down, and I admire that. But basically, you could make the case that Kanye West is the coolest single individual in the entire pop culture. And for him to say, I like Donald Trump and I listen to Thomas Sowell, is a catastrophe for the left. Because now you've got somebody who could actually carry the torch of the counter-revolution against the man. And when Kanye West, talks about, liking Trump and stuff, but he said some other things that are interesting too. He said Obama was president for 8 years. He didn't do anything for Black America. That message needs to be repeated significantly. So I think that is important. So there's a problem, John. When we were kids, all the cool kids were in the counterculture. Now that we're adults, all the cool kids are in the culture. And all of us nerdy conservatives are the counterculture. Sometimes people will, very kindly say things like, Bill's a conservative star. And it's like, my response to this always, the second I get to the mic, is if I'm a celebrity, then this movement is in real trouble. I was watching. There's a cool little jazz club that we went to, and that some of you mentioned already. We went to a little while ago, Natasha and I. And to my surprise, I was looking at the schedule and I saw coming up Seth MacFarlane, who is the guy behind Family Guy and American Dad and all the rest of this stuff. Seth is a big old progressive, and he's sitting on the. I watched him in a clip sitting on Graham Norton's show, sitting right next to Charlize Theron. They were in a movie together. I forget, Million Ways to Die or something. I forget what it was called. Anyway, I'm looking at Seth MacFarlane doing these impressions, and there's Charlize Theron laughing, and there's Will Ferrell there, and whoever else is there, and I think, man, I mean, I remember feeling it just like this wave. It's like, what could I be on the cool guy team just once? I mean, and you see all these actors and all these people who you admire, and good point, Eric Blake, and you just wish, you just would like be like, I wish I could hang with them. I wish I could be on that team. I don't want to be on that team, but it would be nice just for once to be on the team with the cool people, because they carry so much emotional, psychological weight. Now, Eric M. Blake just said, right now the coolest dude in Hollywood is Chris Pratt, and he's a transparent closet conservative. He is, in fact, the coolest dude in Hollywood, Chris Pratt. I'd put Chris Pratt in the top 3 or 4 or 5 people in terms of influential right now. He's terrific. And there's no question he's a conservative. None. And A Million Ways to Die in the West. Thanks, Lord Teal. That was the movie with Seth and Charlize. Yeah, and Chris Pratt. So now the question is, does Kanye West take enough heat so that people like Chris Pratt and the rest of them can kind of come out and say, yeah, I kind of agree with Kanye on some of these things. I don't know. But he is really the hope. The hope is that a tipping point will come, and it will be, in fact, exactly like this example I've been using for 12 years now. It really will be like the end of The Emperor's New Clothes, where all of a sudden everybody on the parade will realize at the same time that they all actually felt the same way, and they were all just kind of agreeing with other people because they wanted to get along, and that really the number of people who actually believe this progressive nonsense is really pretty small, and that most people never admit it, but most people really think, that this whole, whiny social justice warrior things they're just a bunch of weenies. Just shut up, take it easy. You're offended by this, big deal. How hard is that? You got offended by anything. You're offended by the color of the sidewalk, for God's sake. That's not an achievement in life. Shut up, go away, leave me alone. Take your noise and your whining someplace else. I'd like to think we'd get to that point. I think that many people feel that. And if we have a few more Conways of that magnitude, I meant to say, we could see it could happen very fast. It could just really be a tipping point thing. Everything just goes boom. We'll find out, John. Back to Merlin Wendelboe again. If Crazy Bernie were to pass his Guaranteed Jobs program, would it turn out like the Guaranteed Student Loan Program, where the government guarantees to ruin your life if you don't pay it back? So you're given the job of a dead possum remover. Thank you. Yeah, that was quite a day. I admire that man. I think about that often, actually. And you have to do that job, no choice about it, no way out of the job except for death or dismemberment, and that's not slavery, question mark? I'm not sure if I think that the idea of the government, when the government took over student loans, took them away from banks, and this is why these medieval Renaissance poetry majors are graduating with master's degrees in medieval. I keep saying medieval Renaissance poetry. That's an oxymoron. I meant to say medieval Italian poetry, or because medieval and Renaissance are 2 different periods. Anyway, you got this bizarre arcane degree. You've got a master's degree in studies, and now you're looking at $200,000 worth of student debt that you accrued, and then you have to pay it back, and the government's holding the note. And if I understand you correctly, Merlin, you're saying, well, you're kind of enslaved to the government. But my feeling, Merlin, is that those loans, when Obama put that in there, and I think he tied it into Obamacare, when the progressives put student loans under the purview of the federal government, I completely feel that they do not expect those loans to be repaid, that it's not a loan. They're calling it a loan. And they'll certainly they'll take your money, that microscopic few that are able to make payments on it. But I don't think it was ever intended to be a loan in the way that you and I and other reasonable people understand the term. It was buying votes. It's not so hard, really. It's just really actually very simple. They were simply buying young people's votes. So here's $200,000. No need to go out in the world and work, because if you work, then we're going to take your half of what you make in taxes, and then you'll vote Republican. We can't have that. So we're going to just allow you to stay a child forever and let you get a degree in some ridiculous, absurd fantasy degree like, I don't know, theater or something, like my degree that I didn't get. And we'll let you be a child for another 10, 15, 20 years. And all that really matters is that you vote for us. And once you reach this understanding, everything becomes clear. There are kind of these uber kind of things that have just slowly dawned on me over the years, and there are not many of them, maybe 3 or 4 of them, but this is one of them. One of them is when you say, well, don't people realize that this makes people dependent? It seems like, how could they not see it? Of course they see it. They want you to be dependent. That's the reason that they do it. That's the reason there's welfare the way it's existing. The reason that we have these social programs and that we take half of the money that you make and give it to other people is so that we can buy their votes. We don't care if their lives are ruined. This is the progressive point of view. We don't care if they have no future. We don't care if they're doomed to a life of crime or poverty or drug addiction. It's not our problem. As long as they vote for us, we'll take it. We'll just keep giving them money and they'll keep getting their votes, and that's what we'll do. And people with any kind of character or integrity or honor or anything look at this and they think it's repulsive and disgusting, and how could you possibly believe that? And you realize they do it because they have no honor, they have no integrity, they don't care. It's all about the power. It's all about having the nice things. You can understand a lot when you get to the kind of the meta level. Here's another one. Why do these professors constantly teach young people to be socialists? Why? It's not that they get orders from the Kremlin. They get help, but they don't even realize that help is there. It's not like they have a little receiver down in the basement and then they go upstairs and and beep 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 beep. No. Why are so many professors? Why are the overwhelming majority of college professors and teachers in general, but college professors especially, why are they so far left wing that they're either socialists or actual communists? You ever think about that? It's pretty simple, really. This is another thing that when you understand this, everything else makes complete sense. College professors are left wing because college professors cannot understand or stomach the fact that somebody as smart as they are is making $25,000 a year, while that knuckle-dragging Yahoo down the street has got $70 million because he's selling cars. It's intolerable to them. It's intolerable to them. And now we get down to the actual main point, which is simply this. College professors could be making more money than they're making now, but not as college professors. And now we're on to the main vein. If college professors wanted to go out and get a real job and work hard, because I've been to college, and with the exception of engineering professors or things like that, the life of a theater professor is not what I would call grueling, and I know a few of them. So, this is the psychological box they find themselves in. I'm very smart. I'm very talented. I don't want to go out and actually work, heaven forfend. So, what I really want is, I want other people to go and work, but I want to be able to have stuff that's as nice as their stuff. And if it means that we all have stuff that's less nice, I don't care. The idea that somebody's out there stupider than me, because I know everything there is to know about about Ben Jonson and Christopher Marlowe. Everybody knows about Shakespeare, but I specialize, of course, in Ben Jonson and Christopher Marlowe and William Kemp's antics with dancing the jig and so on. I know such a great deal about these things. You see, I'm so incredibly, terribly smart that that the idea that other people are making more money than them is intolerable, because the choices are: I either have to go and work hard, or I have to eat this, or hang on now, I can teach an entire generation of young, impressionable minds that there's something fundamentally unfair about this, and altogether we can vote ourselves into other people's money. See how easy it is? Nothing to it. When you understand that California politicians, they understand that their tax rates are driving businesses out. They understand that they're ruining the future. They understand that the roads are hell and they're taking $200,000 worth of annual retirement pensions. It's not like they're unaware of it. They understand it. They just don't care. They don't care. It's not their problem. They're getting their money, and that's all they care about. They don't care. They have no conscience in the way that we understand it. It's all narcissism and pride and laziness and envy. And when you understand these things, life gets very simple, strangely enough. And speaking of Crazy Bernie, I'll never get tired of talking about this. Bernie Sanders has 3 houses. End of discussion, period. It's over. It's done. When I found that out, it was after the election was over. And now, anytime I run into a Bernie supporter, it's over for them. It's done. They're finished. It's finished. It's over. There's no argument. There's no discussion. Nothing. We're not going to talk about socialism. We're not going to talk about anything. We're not going to talk about doing it right. We're not going to talk about Sweden. We're not going to talk about anything. You voted for Bernie Sanders because he's a socialist. He owns 3 houses. What's the matter with you? Bernie Sanders would be lucky if he made enough money to pay for a studio apartment if he had to work in the real world. Now, Bernie Sanders buys 3 houses because Bernie Sanders is rich, and Bernie Sanders rich because he's convinced idiots that being rich is a bad thing. That's why Bernie Sanders is rich. He's rich because he's convinced idiots that it's terrible to be rich. It's evil to have more than 1 house. And he convinces people that it's evil. And that's what makes him be worth enough money to have 3 houses. Duh. And you would think that even the dimmest genius would be able to see this. But no. This is one of the reasons why progressives are what they are, by the way. You see, they're seduced by by how impressed they are with their mediocre advantage in intellect. This is the whole Island 120 thing. There are a bunch of guys with IQs of 110, 108, 115, and they all want to be on 120. They all look the same way, talk the same way, speak the same things. They all want to be teaching each other how smart they are. And we can't possibly disagree because God knows if you believe in Jesus, there's no way you could be a smart person and do that. So that's obviously out of the question. There's a bunch of other things you can say and can't say and so on in order to fit into the Genius Club. See how smart we are? But this is all just a giant, let's just say circular motion. And smart people don't have to prove how smart they are. Smart people don't have to agree with other people because smart people know something is true. And if it turns out that they see evidence that it's not true, that smart people change their minds. They don't have, I don't, I don't mean this to sound, because I don't know who's watching or listening. It's just, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, is what I'm trying to say. But here's something I've noticed. And this is how I would not, I don't mean any disparagement by the analogy, but you can take the analogy and apply it to progressives, and then you can disparage them all you want to. That's very lovely, actually. George Freeland said an IQ of 120 puts you at the bottom of the top 10%. That's perfect. Yes, that's perfect. They're at the bottom of the top 10%. That's exactly right, George. That's great. That's great. I cannot forget that. That's precisely in a nutshell what the problem is. That's the problem. They're in the bottom of the top 10%. How about that? That's really very enlightening. What I was gonna say about this whole people talking about intelligence and how smart they are and stuff. I see an analogy with men who are sensitive about their height, and and when you're a shorter fella, a lot of shorter men don't want to go out with women who are taller than they are because it makes them feel short. But my wife is 5'11", and if she were 6'3", it wouldn't bother me at all. It wouldn't bother me going out with a taller woman or being married to one because I'm not a short guy. That's what I'm getting at. Um, I don't I don't have to worry about looking shorter than somebody because I'm going out with a taller woman because I'm 6'1's pretty tall. So I don't have that insecurity about it. And this is the way it is with them and their intellect. They're all they're all insecure about how smart they are, and that's why they're all constantly talking about each other about how smart they are, and everybody who's smart believes these things. Right, right, yes, right, absolutely. Again, emperor's new clothes kind of thing. But actual smart people don't they don't have to agree with everybody. They don't have to. And as I've said many times, Thomas Sowell is probably an IQ of 180 or something. 120 IQ is so far in Thomas Sowell's rearview mirror that he can just look at these things that these people believe, and say, "You don't seriously believe this, do you really?" Well, all smart people do. Okay, well, you just tell yourself that and have a nice day now. Bless your heart. So anyway, last one. My neck's killing me. I can go home to my beautiful wife and have a lovely dinner and get out the Tiger Balm. And I go to see the chiropractor tomorrow, and he's going to make my neck make a noise that it shouldn't make, and then I'll be fine. But it's really hurting now. So, Steve Darrow, your question, here it comes. I know this is the moment that you've been waiting for forever and ever and ever. And I saw your comments. I hope we're going to get to his question. I'm going to get to it. I hope we get to it. And we're going to get to it, Steve. We'll get to it next week. That'll do it, I think. No, that's all right, Steve. I didn't want to give you a heart palpitation. Here we go. Steve Darrow's question. This is the question to Steve Darrow. Now, please, if we could have a moment of silence, ladies and gentlemen. Steve Darrow's question. He begins. I appreciate you answering my intellectual dark web question in TSL 180, but you answered it as if I were referring to the alt-right dark web. I was referring to the group of thinkers that, well, make up Dave Rubin's guest lists. So let me reframe. This is a restatement of Steve Darrow's original question, and is worthy of even double respect that way. So here we go. Let me reframe. Out of Dave's guest list, who would you like to see debate each other, and what topic would you like them to tackle? I don't know Dave Rubin's guest list. I know I'm on it, and I know that Stefan Munoz on it. I personally think that the person I'd like to see, the two people I'd like to see debate would be me and Dave Rubin. And the reason I think that this would be worthwhile is because it's instructive. If you've seen the After Hours segments I did with Dave Rubin, it's so instructive that Dave Rubin, who calls himself a liberal, certainly has a lot of progressive, bona fides. I mean, he's gay. He's been a liberal for a long time. He's got a lot of liberal credentials. Of course, he's speaking sense now, so that's basically thrown him out of that club. But in any event, you would definitely call him a liberal. He would certainly call himself a liberal. And Dave Rubin and I sat down and said on the air, and I think it's a really great point. I said, Dave, you could come with 10 of your supporters. I could bring 10 of mine. We could all 20 of us, 22 of us, sit down. Math's not my strong suit. Never said it was. Could sit around a table, and I guarantee you we could come up with a political program that we would all be able to agree on. I guarantee it. And you could sell that to 85% of the American people easily. There's 5 or 10% on the right that, 7% wouldn't. No, that's just too liberal for me. And there's probably a larger group of lunatics on the left. Oh, there's no way I can possibly allow that. But most everybody would agree with these fundamental things. I think you could actually really get there. You just first thing you have to do is throw away the labels. But and the second thing you have to do is you have to do something that I did with Dave, Dave did with me, and it's actually becoming more and more scarce to the detriment of the country, the future, our mental health, and everything else. And that is when I deal with Dave, when I talk with Dave, I I I give him the presumption of being a good fellow who wants good things to happen, and he certainly seemed to do that with me. I didn't just automatically assume that he was spawned from the gates of hell and was determined to destroy everything that was worth keeping. And he didn't do the same for me. When you can get to that place and start there, start from the belief that this guy seems like a good guy and he seems like a smart guy. So uh, maybe I'll learn something. That's the beginning of the whole thing. So I think that's basically it. I think that there is certainly rising out there a number of voices. Gavin, oh my God, what is his name? It just flew right out of my head. Oh, I've been on his show. Get off my lawn, Gavin. Dave Rubin is one. Jordan Peterson. There is a certainly a rising tide of people who are beginning to speak sensibly, and and Kanye West is aware of it. Candace Owens and several others. So yeah, I think in a weird sort of way, even though it's darker than it was in terms of the future, the near future is horrifying. The more distant future is looking better. As the what used to be the distant future is now the near future. Beyond that, I think it might be a little bit better. I'm going to do one more from Eric M. Blake, who's such a fine fellow and has been very patient. So I'll do one more. Hey Bill, you've often noted that we're the ones that believe in loud guns, fast cars, and hot women. So does that mean that we can rank the Fast and the Furious movies among most conservative films ever made? I haven't seen them, Eric. I would probably say no. It seems like they're stealing. I don't know that to be true. Gavin McInnes, thank you, Ted, and Simon Says, and everybody else. The thing about I never qualified it because I didn't really have to. The left doesn't like loud guns. They don't like fast cars. They don't like hot women. But when I say these things, what I mean is fast cars in the hands of good guys, loud guns in the hands of good guys, and hot women in the hands of good guys. See what I did there? Certainly, all those things can be employed in negative ways. And I have not seen the Fast and the Furious movies. Haven't seen a frame of them, but it doesn't strike me as something that I would want my daughter to marry into if I had a daughter, and I don't. So that's kind of a silly thing to say, I guess. And with aches and pains arising, I think we're going to call this one a day. Thanks again to everybody for being a part of the fun here and the great questions as always. And I try not to ever end a show without thanking our paying members at billwhittle.com who keep the orange walls orange and the lights on yours truly. It's just a very small group of people, and they do all the heavy lifting. And I am enormously grateful to every single one of you, and it's been a signal pleasure of my life to be able to get to meet so many of you out on the road. I love meeting people at any event, but when they come up and say, hey, we're members, it just automatically is just, wow, thank you. And from Natasha as well, thank you. So that'll do it for this episode, which is in fact episode number... Wow. 181, 182. I don't know, 184, something like that. What the hell? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Um, and yeah, we'll see you out there. Simon says again, thank you. You've done excellent work for us in the Aurora project, and more of that coming. So we now will go through the shutdown checklist, the after landing shutdown checklist, where the 7 steps that we have to take to stop the recordings and feeds and everything all have to happen. So the first people that we get to say goodbye to in this little goat rodeo of button pushing is our YouTube fans watching on Stratosphere Lounge on YouTube. I'm going to hit the button that ends that recording. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you soon.